Suttree by Cormac McCarthy, the last remaining McCarthy novel that I had yet to read, in which I wanted to read before getting to his new novel, The Passenger. Now, if you have watched my channel at all, you may be aware that Cormac McCarthy is my boy. He is my favorite living writer, one of my favorite writers of all time, and I think he probably is the greatest living writer. However, just because he is my favorite writer does not mean that he is above my criticism or that he gets any kind of a pass. And so, while it utterly tears my heart out to say what I'm about to say, I have always prided myself on being that guy who will say what nobody else has the balls to say. I will be that little boy in the story who says that the emperor has no clothes. That's me. And so, even though it hurts me, hurts me to say what I'm about to say, I have to. My integrity will not allow me not to. And so, Suttree is absolutely awful. It is, in my humble estimation, the worst book that Cormac McCarthy has ever penned. It is an abject failure on every level except one. There have been other McCarthy books that I have not particularly cared for. His debut novel, The Orchard Keeper, I was just kind of a Faulkner ripoff, and didn't really uh, care for that a lot. But it was just, it's okay. It's not bad. I don't, actively dislike it. And Child of God, I don't really like that book because it's just kind of mean spirited and kind of grotesque for the sake of grotesqueness, and there's not really any deeper significance to it like there is with the best of his books. But at least that book was entertaining and it was mercifully brief, so I don't really hold anything against it. But Suttree is not like that. Suttree is the first, and I guess the only, Cormac McCarthy book that I have ever actively disliked. In fact, I borderline detested this book. And again, it just rips my heart out to say it, but it's true, or at least it was to me. This book freaking sucked. And I'm going to explain to you why. So, to begin with, let's start out with what Suttree is about. Suttree is an anomaly in Cormac McCarthy's bibliography. For one, it is much longer than any of his other books. It is actually like twice the length of some of his other books. Also, it's much more free flowing and not very goal oriented. There is no real plot here, and that is one of the most damning faults with it. There is no plot here. It's just a series of incidents that don't really lead anywhere. But also, it took him 20 years to write this. And I can only imagine that was because he had to purchase every thesaurus available to him and feverishly flip through all those pages to find the most obscure and recondite words imaginable to write this. But the story, such as it is in Suttree, is the tale of Cornelius Suttree, the titular character. He is an affluent, college educated guy who has turned his back on all that. He has bought himself a houseboat to live on the Knoxville River in Tennessee, and he is bumming it. He does very little other than just catch catfish to make a quick buck here and there by selling them to vendors and food salesmen and whatnot. And that's pretty much it. He goes to bars and drinks and parties and hangs out with the boys and catches some more catfish, and that's pretty much it. That is basically all that happens in this book. Now, I don't want it to sound like I am criticizing this book solely because it is uneventful or boring, which I did find it extremely boring. But I'm not criticizing it because of that. Some of the best books in the world are ostensibly uneventful and boring. That is not where my ire lies with Suttree. My ire lies with the fact that it fails to connect on any kind of emotional or intellectual level, and as well that the characters in this book are flat as crap and they do not change or alter in any way at all. This book, the only success that Suttree has lies in the writing. To speak on the writing, I will say right now that this is the book where McCarthy went all out. This is balls to the wall writing. With your typical McCarthy novel like Blood Meridian, his best known work, I guess, you take that book. Large sections of that book are just the uh, the the simple descriptive sentences. They went here and they did this, then they went here and they did this other thing, and then it will segue into the flowery, very lush and vivid metaphors that he is known for, often replete with archaic and obscure words that no one will know. But the writing style it's very palatable, even though it gets very ambitious and lofty, and you can kind of lose the thread if you're not used to that kind of thing. It starts out in such a way that it kind of lulls you into it. This book is distinct in that it is start to finish some of the most lush and flowery and vivid and just plain beautiful writing that you're probably ever going to read. This is the one book, I think, in his body of work where he just truly went all out with it. He held nothing back. And that's why I think this probably took 20 years to write, because he had to go through, as I said, all the thesauruses and pick out the most obscure and unknown words that he could, because within the first 20 pages of this book, I had lost track of the amount of words that I did not know. I don't think some of the words in this book have been used in probably hundreds of years. Cormac McCarthy is one of a kind in that regard. He writes with those weird archaic words that most people, 99 out of 100 people, are not going to know. And that's part of the charm. That's part of where the allure lies, because it's very uniquely him. And the writing in this book is the one area that it succeeds. This book is one of the most beautiful things that I have ever read. And I will say that, even starting out by saying that I didn't like the book, I will say that the writing in this book was breathtaking. It is one of the most beautifully written books I've ever read. However, it is like putting perfume on a pile of shit. It is utterly unmerited, because the story it tells is shallow, vulgar, and does not warrant the craftsmanship that has been exerted upon it. I said that The Orchard Keeper, his debut novel, was very Faulknerian. This is also very Faulknerian my perspective, because it is a whole lot of work done on something that really doesn't deserve it, which is my experience with a lot of Faulkner's work. The story that this book tells, that can barely be called a story. I hesitate to even call this a novel. It's rather a loosely connected series of vignettes involving the same characters. You could take this book and pull the pages out of it by the sections, because it doesn't have chapters. It's like Ulysses. And there I have heard a lot of comparisons of this book to Ulysses, and I really do think that this was Cormac McCarthy's attempt at writing a Ulysses. But you could take, like Ulysses, it's broken up into just nameless sections. You could take those sections out, toss them up in the air, and do a cut up kind of technique like Joseph Heller employs in Catch 22, where you don't have any idea what order any of the events happen in. They're just kind of haphazardly retold. You could do that with this book, and not a damn thing would change with this plot. And that is damning to the book, because it shows just how badly it fails. First of all, the characters in this book suck. All of them have the exact same personality. That is raucous drunk. That is all that this book is populated with, is raucous drunk. Suttree lives in kind of a demimonde of just drunks, lowlifes, misfits, weirdos, and stuff. This is very much, to take the subtitle from Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, this is very much life among the lowly. However, they are not admirable in the slightest. They are dirty, vulgar, vile, and kind of disgusting. And I'm not trying to say that that can't be good literature, but it's not here, because all the characters, as I said, are basically just the same character. You cannot tell any of them apart, including Suttree. Now, this brings me to my biggest critique, and the thing reading this book has revealed to me more than any other book McCarthy's weaknesses as a writer. I have always known that character was the weak spot with McCarthy because he doesn't seem to care about uh, crafting characters that are perspicuous. They're not easily understandable. Um, there are no glimpses into their mind. There are no insights into their thought processes. It's just their actions and their words. You don't get any kind of glimpse into their inner lives. And that's partly why I think Child of God is not that good of a book, because there is no deeper meaning to that book other than just a character study. However, it's not a very good character study when you don't show us what the inside of the characters' minds look like. That's why I don't like that book. But again, that book was like not even 200 pages about. This book is almost 500 pages, and the character is nothing. Cornelius Suttree is nothing in this book. He is an unknowable block of wood at the beginning of this book, and he is the same damn thing at the end of this book. And that's partly why this book is such a failure, because you cannot do that. This book is just a whole lot of flowery, pretty words and nothing underneath. Characters don't change, they are not well developed. He doesn't even tell us why Suttree has done this. Like he gives little hints, very, very brief little snatches of information that Suttree has a life outside of this houseboat that he lives in on the river and all the losers that he hangs around with. He came from a very well-to-do family, and he's very highly educated, and so he's kind of an anomaly among the crowd that he associates with. But he never even tells us why he's come to be here. Why did he leave it all behind? Why did he turn his back on his affluence to come down here with the bums and the winos on the river? Why? Don't know. He never lets us in on that at all. Also, the events in this book have no bearing whatsoever on Cornelius Suttree's psyche after they happen. That's why I said you could cut this book up and rearrange it in any order and nothing would change. That's why it fails. Because early on in the book, McCarthy kind of blindsides us with this revelation that Suttree had a wife and child who he abandoned for whatever reason. Again, don't know because he won't tell us. And that his little boy, who's like a toddler, has died. And so he's really sad in that one brief section. He's really sad, and he goes to his son's funeral and watches his son be buried. And then he's really bummed and he's really depressed. And then the next section starts, and it's never freaking mentioned again, ever. None of the shit in this book affects his mind at all. It happens in the moment, and then it's never referenced again. It does not have any bearing, and it does not have any weight. And that is, again, another reason why this book sucks so bad, because nothing in this story matters. It happens and it's gone, and then it's never brought up again. So what's the point? Again, I realize that I sound pretty harsh on this, but you're damn right I'm harsh on this. This is my favorite writer letting me down and doing it a very, very heavy job of letting me down. I mean, damn, this book sucked. And it hurts me, but it also irks me to say that. The writing, again, in this book is some of the most beautiful I think I've ever read, but it's wasted on a story that doesn't matter and it doesn't say anything. Again, the story that this book tells got lost in the multiple thesauruses that I'm sure he flipped through to find these words. Because by the time I finished this book, I had a small book myself full of words that I have never encountered in my life, and I don't think I will ever encounter again outside of this book. But it's all just wasted effort on this story. The characters are flat, and he never gives us any insight into their minds at all, even when you would have to, because there's a section in this book where Suttree just wanders out in the woods in the wintertime and nearly dies. He nearly starves and freezes to death. Why? Don't know. He still doesn't let us know why someone would do something like that. He just wanders out in the woods, spends the whole winter like a wild man out in the woods, and almost he like loses his mind basically. And it's never explained why that happens. It's he doesn't give us anything that we would need to make any kind of unreal human out of these names that he gives us on the paper. Towards the end of the book, all the characters that Suttree associates with, and they all have nicknames like Bucket, Hoghead, like they all just have nicknames, good old boys, you know. Um, and he all at the end of the book, all these characters start being killed off in just a mass slaughter of because and that's another way it was so cheap. It was like we're getting to the end of the book now, finally. So I'm just going to go ahead and kill off all these people here at the end. But it doesn't have any impact on Suttree. Like he reads in the paper of all his friends getting killed, and he's just like, oh, well, he's dead. Is that it? Like nothing matters in this book to the main character or to us by extension. It's all just meaningless. It's a very beautifully written story that is shallow, depthless, and utterly without point. Again, Child of God and The Orchard Keeper aren't great, but at least they were short, and at least Child of God was, if nothing else, entertaining. This isn't even entertaining. By the time I reached page 200 of this book, which is not even halfway, I was ready for it to be over because I falsely and foolishly assumed that something was going to happen. Uh, I just like you think, okay, we've had like so many instances of the dude getting drunk and getting in fights and then catching catfish and getting drunk and getting in more fights and whatnot. Something's got to happen. Something has to develop. But no, the rest of the book is just more drunken brawls and fishing, and that's it. This book is an utter waste of time, and that hurts me to say more than anything. This book is a waste of McCarthy's time writing it. Literally, he wasted 20 years of his life writing this, and I wasted a week of my life reading it. And damn, that hurts me to say, but again, I am that little boy who will say that the emperor has no clothes, and the emperor in this case is bare ass naked. Suttree is a truly awful book. It is a failure, as I said, in every respect except the writing, and I did not like it. And although McCarthy is still my favorite writer, and this ended up being a little bit more vitriolic than I think I intended it to be, I think that vitriol is warranted because this book could have been so much more than it was, but it wasn't. It's just a chronicle of meaningless crap written very well, but it's a waste of time. It is a waste of time. If I wanted to spend time with alcoholic rednecks with weird nicknames, I would just spend time with my neighbors. I would not. I don't. I didn't pick this book up. I didn't buy this book. Actually, this book was a gift. No, actually, no. Actually, I bought this one. I thought this was the one that I got as a gift. But no, I actually spent my hard-earned money on this. But I did not buy this book just to read what it was, which was just a bunch of crap. This book is absolute crap. To rate this book in terms of the writing, this is an A plus. In terms of the overall experience, I'm giving this a D. That is the lowest I have ever given a Cormac McCarthy book. And please, dear God, don't let The Passenger be like this. Please don't let him have backslid into this style of writing. I see now after reading Suttree that the McCarthy that I love, that I adore and admire, really only matters from 1985 with the publication of Blood Meridian to now. That's the McCarthy I like. The early years, the first four books, The Orchard Keeper, Outer Dark, Child of God, and Suttree, the Southern Gothic period, uh, yeah, take it or leave it. And with this book in particular, definitely leave it. Of the four books that preceded Blood Meridian, I think Outer Dark is my favorite. That's the only one that really struck a chord with me and showed me any kind of promise. This was nothing at all, and I'm tired of talking about it. So yeah, Suttree by Cormac McCarthy. This book is freaking awful, and it pains me to say that, but I have to say it. Again, in terms of the writing, if you're just quantifying it based on the writing, it is an A+. I don't think you can get any better than this book in terms of writing. But for the overall experience, the story, which was non-existent, the characters, which were also non-existent, the emotional connection, which was non-existent, it fails every level except the writing, and that's why this gets a D. Again, hurts me, but what can you do? It's the truth. So, Suttree by Cormac McCarthy. Have you read Suttree? If you have, let me know down in the comments what you thought about it, whether you have agreed or disagreed with anything I have said about it here today. I know there's a lot of people out there that probably disagree pretty strongly with my take here, but I mean, I can only be me, and this is how this book struck me. And if you have not read Suttree, don't read it. Please don't. It is a waste of everybody's time involved. And again, nothing hurts me more than to say that about my favorite writer. But this book really was just a waste of time. So don't read it. I'm not going to recommend it. It sucked. But to close, as always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to like, subscribe, help the channel out a little bit. And until next time, peace.